Hi guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome to another video. So yeah, in this video, I thought, as we have had the recent release of Avatar: The Way of the Water, I thought I would do a ranking of James Cameron's filmography, including Avatar: The Way of the Water, and I'll give you a ranking of his movies from worst to best. James Cameron has been one of my favourite directors for a very long time now. I think I saw most of his movies when I was probably way too young to see them at the time, but I've always really enjoyed his films. I think they have such a great rewatch factor. They're always really entertaining, and I'm always really excited to see what he's going to do next as a director because all of his movies always tend to be very groundbreaking in some sort of way. He's not exactly the most prolific of directors. He's had quite a long career, but he's only made about 9 movies in that time. So not exactly that many movies, but what he lacks for in quantity, he more than makes up for in quality. Because for me, pretty much all of his movies are really good, really entertaining, and yeah, just fantastic movies. And it was actually quite hard to put this list together because I pretty much love the majority of his films, and trying to sort of rank them from worst to best was quite a tough task. But I've given it a go, and yeah, I will now go through that list. So as I said earlier, I count 9 movies in James Cameron's filmography, so I'm going to go from ninth place first, and yeah, in ninth place I'm going to have to go with Piranha 2, The Spawning. Now, this movie kind of falls into last place, mainly by default. There's even some debate on whether this is even considered a James Cameron movie, because I've read that he was fired halfway through production. He had a lot of disagreements with the producers. He was locked out of the editing room. Another director came and took over the movie. So yeah, it's kind of up for debate whether this is even considered a James Cameron movie. But if we are going to consider it a James Cameron movie, it would still fall into last place for me. Yeah, it's just kind of typical B-movie fun. It is a fun movie, but it's not a very serious one. It doesn't feel like a very serious attempt to make a movie in comparison to James Cameron's other films that all feel like they are, very serious attempts. But here, it's a bit of a silly movie. What can you expect from a movie that's called Piranha 2, The Spawning? And it also features flying piranhas. Yeah, you're getting what you pay for with this movie. It is fun, it is silly, but it's definitely last place for me. So yeah, that's Piranha 2, The Spawning in last place. Next up in 8th place, I'm gonna go with Avatar, the original 2009 movie. Now, when this movie came out, I remember being very excited for it. It was the first James Cameron movie we'd had in, I think, about 12 years. I was 19 years old when this movie came out, and I went to see it in the cinema, and I absolutely loved it. It was a fantastic cinema experience, visually stunning movie, very groundbreaking at the time it came out. We hadn't really seen anything like it before, and yeah, I just loved the movie. However, when I come to rewatch this movie, I do kind of struggle with it, and it definitely doesn't have the same impact as it did the first time I saw it. And it's probably the only movie in Cameron's whole filmography that I don't really enjoy revisiting. Visually, it's a stunning film, but from a story and character perspective, I just find it a bit dull, a bit boring, and I don't really connect with this movie on like an emotional level. It's got some fantastic action sequences, especially in the last act. We've got a great villain with Stephen Lang, and the rest of the cast are all great, but it's just the only movie in his filmography that just feels kind of plain. It doesn't really have that edge to it, because most of Cameron's other movies, they always have something that reels me back in, and I can rewatch most of his other movies on a regular basis, but this is the only one that I just don't really enjoy coming back to. It's still a good movie, don't get me wrong, but just in terms of a story and a character perspective, it just doesn't really have enough in there for me. So Yeah, sadly, it has to fall into eighth place. Right, so into seventh place now, and I am going to have to go with the latest movie from James Cameron, which is, of course, Avatar: The Way of the Water, the sequel to the original Avatar movie. Now, I've only just recently watched this movie in the cinema, but I've got to say, I really enjoyed this film. I think it is a huge improvement over the original. It still suffers from some of the same issues that the original had. It's kind of got an excessive running time, and aspects of the film are a bit sluggish. I think the middle act of the movie in particular is very slow, very sluggish in places. I think they could have chopped it up a little bit, but from a story and character perspective, I connected with it a lot more on an emotional level. I really liked the family aspect of it. It was great to see Stephen Lang back as the villain. The circumstances around his return are a bit not handled that well. It's a bit choppy in places, certainly at the beginning. But again, we've got some amazing action sequences, and the last hour of this film is just incredible. There are some amazing action sequences on show in this movie. And this movie proves two things to me. It proves that Cameron is the master of underwater action sequences, and he's also the master of sequels. I think this is a fantastic movie, a fantastic sequel, huge improvements over the original. It still only falls into seventh place out of his entire filmography, but the only reason it does is because the rest of the movies I have to talk about, I just enjoy them more. But this is still a really, really good movie, and I'm actually really looking forward to Avatar 3. But yeah, that is Avatar: The Way of the Water in seventh place. Right, so into sixth place now, and it really pains me to put this movie in sixth place because I genuinely love this film. But as I said, Cameron's filmography is very hard to rank for me, and something does have to fall into sixth place, and that movie is The Abyss from 1989. So yeah, this is possibly Cameron's most forgotten movie, but then at the same time, I know it does have a very strong cult following amongst James Cameron fans, and I can certainly understand that. I think this is a great movie. Maybe some people expected it to be more of like an action sci-fi horror movie, especially as it has aliens in it, but it doesn't really go down that route. It's more of an optimistic look at extraterrestrial life. It kind of feels a little bit like E.T. in places, but it still does have that Cameron edge to it. But I just think it's a fantastic movie with some great underwater sequences. The cast is great. Ed Harris, Mary Elizabeth Monstromo, and Michael Biehn is the villain. He makes a fantastic villain in this movie. It's probably one of his most underrated performances of all time. And yeah, it's just a great film. It still only falls into sixth place, but I still love it nonetheless. But yeah, that is The Abyss in sixth place. Right, so into fifth place now, and I'm going to go with 1997's Titanic. Now, I'm always going to have a special place in my heart for this movie. It came out in 1997. I was 7 years old at the time it was released, and I remember my mum bought it on VHS not long after it came out, and it wasn't long before I found it and watched it. And yeah, this movie just completely captivated me as a 7-year-old. I just think in terms of, a blockbuster with, really compelling lead characters, a really engrossing story and amazing production, especially in that latter half of the movie. It's just an incredible film. I know some people do have issues with maybe some of the fictional aspects of it, considering it is based on a real tragedy. I know some people aren't really the biggest fans of the romance elements of the movie, but I love it nonetheless. It's 3 hours long, but the pacing of this film is absolutely incredible. It's 3 hours long, but it only feels like it's about 90 minutes long. The second half of the movie, where it concentrates on the sinking of the Titanic, it's just incredible stuff. And, it's a great disaster movie. And yeah, I just love this film. Maybe I've got that nostalgia attached to it, but I just think it is such a great movie to watch on like a Friday or Saturday night. And yeah, I can't say much more than that. That is Titanic in fifth place. Right, so we're into the last four movies now, and this is where it becomes really difficult because these four movies are all perfect in my eyes. They're all perfect movies, so it's quite hard to rank them, but I've done my best. But in fourth place, I'm going to go with True Lies, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger in a movie that was released in 1994. Now, again, like The Abyss, this is probably Cameron's most forgotten movie, but I feel like it's maybe a little bit more popular than The Abyss just because it does have Arnold Schwarzenegger in it. Um, and yeah, what can I say? I love this film. This was possibly the first James Cameron movie I ever saw, and it was possibly one of the first Arnold Schwarzenegger movies I ever saw. And yeah, I just love it. I have a lot of nostalgia for it, but I just think it is an absolutely fun ride from start to finish. Some people seem to consider it a bit of a generic action movie, but I don't really see it like that. I think there's a lot of clever moments in this film. It's got some stunning action sequences, and it's got a lot of comedy in it. It's probably Cameron's funniest film, and it's probably one of Arnie's funniest film. There's some really great moments in it, along with him, Jamie Lee Curtis, and even Tom Arnold. Yeah, there's just a lot of hilarious moments in it. And some of the stunts and the action sequences are just incredible. That ending sequence with the Harrier jet, the sequence with the bridge along, is it the Florida Keys, and even some of the earlier action sequences like the motorbike horse chase through the city. Yeah, there's just so many great moments in this film, and it's just such a fun action movie to watch. And again, a great blockbuster to watch on like a Friday or Saturday night. It's just a fantastic film, and yeah, one of my favorites, and it's in fourth place. Right, so into third place now, and I'm going to go with the original Terminator starring Arnold Schwarzenegger, released in 1984. Again, this movie is perfect in my eyes. It's just a great sort of low budget sci-fi action film with some horror elements thrown in there, and just a perfectly paced movie with great characters, a great sort of love story thrown in there, great performances from the whole cast, and some really fun action sequences. Kind of a dark movie, quite violent in places, but I love it nonetheless. I honestly can't say much more than that. I don't think it is as good as its sequel, which I will get onto shortly, but I still think it is just a fantastic movie and obviously a landmark film for Arnold Schwarzenegger. But yeah, if you haven't seen this movie, definitely check it out as you won't be disappointed. But yeah, that is The Terminator in third place. Right, so we're into second place now, and I'm going to go with Aliens, released in 1986. Yeah, obviously the sequel to Alien, released in 1979. And yeah, when I first saw this movie, it just completely blew me away. I was about 12 years old. I had just watched Alien, and I thought it was pretty good, but I wasn't really expecting too much from its sequel. But when I saw it, this movie just completely blew me away, and it's probably one of the best sequels of all time. It just takes what was great about that first movie, but just elevates it and just does so much more than trying to copy it. And yeah, I just think this is a fantastic movie that had a huge effect on me, and one that still does every time I rewatch it. Again, the characters are great. The action sequences are just awesome. There's a bit of humor in there. The effects are great. I think the aliens in this movie look better than they ever have. I think they look better than a lot of the aliens that you see in more recent Alien movies that are all made using CGI. But here they're all models, and they just look absolutely incredible. And to this day, the movie still looks absolutely stunning. And I can't say much more than that. It is just a perfect movie, perfect Alien sequel, and a perfect movie from James Cameron. And that is Aliens in second place. Right, guys, so we're into first place. And if you haven't guessed, it is, of course, Terminator 2 Judgment Day, released in 1991. Now, I've always had debates with people about which Terminator movie is better, whether it being this one or the original. And like I said, I think both of them are perfect, and it's really hard to judge which is better. But I think this one just about edges it again, just for the effect it had on me the first time I saw it. I was very young when I saw this movie, and in fact, it was the first Terminator movie I ever saw. I saw this movie before I saw the original one, and again, I was only very, very young when I saw this movie, but it just blew me away. I think the story just works from start to finish, like beat for beat. There's no sort of inconsistencies with the plot. Everything works 100%. The characters are great. Arnie's great as the protagonist. We've got a fantastic villain with Robert Patrick, probably one of the creepiest villains ever to be in a movie. And the action sequences are just incredible. And there's just this great sort of underlying tension throughout this movie. You're on the edge of edge of your seat all the way through this movie. It's just an incredible film. The music is great. And the production, the effects, everything works in this movie. There is not one thing I can say about this movie that would disparage it. It is just perfect 100%. And yeah, I don't think Cameron will ever top it, in my opinion. I think it was probably his peak film. He was at his peak when he made this movie, and yeah, it's just a stunning film, and yeah, one of my all-time favorites. And it does, of course, fall into first place. So there you go, guys. That is my ranking of James Cameron's filmography. Really hope you've enjoyed this video, guys. And let me know in the comments what you think of this ranking. Do you agree with it? Do you disagree with it? Do you have a ranking of your own? I would love to hear your thoughts. So yeah, please let me know in the comments. But yeah, until then, guys, I will see you all again on the next one. So take care, guys.